Hey everybody, it's Thursday at 4 o'clock. This is Steve McKee filling in for Todd Bayer. He went on a family vacation, left me high and dry hanging out at the radio station to talk to you guys. This month, we're making our way down the line of topics for real estate investing. And I believe this month we're moving into offering, but I kind of want to go on to something else. Since I'm sitting here by myself and I'm running through my notes, I want to talk about, what's going on in the market. We don't talk much about prediction, like what's happening. I guess the way to say it is most people like to try and predict the future of the real estate market, but the truth is there really is no crystal ball. But what we can determine is when is the end of the safe zone? So recently, actually last March, Todd and I went and spoke an event, Lance Martin's Coal Banker event out in Ontario, and I did a presentation basically stating that the 2020 was the end of what I felt was the comfortable time to continue investing in an empire. And recently, there was an article from Zillow, and it quoted a bunch of people, including George Soros, and all stating some number like 62 of the top 100 hedge funds believe 2020 is, they're seeing some kind of correction. I believe it's going to go a little farther, somewhere into the between 2020 and 2025. I guess this is sort of my way of putting it on record. So. Todd and I have been talking a lot. For those of you new to the show, we run a company called Community Restoration Group. Community Restoration Group is it's a private equity fund that buys and flips houses here in the Inland Empire. We have like 26 projects going right now. We do somewhere between 40 and 60 a year. We're kind of always have our finger on the pulse. And we had to pick a day recently. Todd wanted to change the way the way we worked with other partners, and I was we're getting really busy, and I was sort of looking for what's going to be next, right? Because we can't expect this to go on forever, and we decided that September 2020 is sort of the end of our run, at least for house flipping until the market makes some kind of correction. We're done buying then, so August 31st will be the last home we buy if we have anything in inventory. And we feel like that's a really safe time to stop buying real estate. With the changes in Dodd-Frank, for those of you who don't know what Dodd-Frank is, it was a major legislation that came post-crash that helped people. It was supposed to help homeowners. It raised costs, but the truth is, it did set some limitations to keep the market stable. But Dodd-Frank, some sections of it are being lifted. Banks are being allowed to not make really aggressive loans, but more aggressive loans than previously, and it will probably extend our market cycle out for a little longer. So if anybody's wondering when the right time to buy is, you can buy as long as you can afford it, but if I was looking for time to sell, it would be somewhere around 2020. I'd be unloading my property. So one of the changes the company decided to make is we're going to go to an all joint venture model. We already do joint venture. So for those who don't know what joint venture is when one partner who has the capital combines their capital with a partner that has a real estate deal. And we, like in our case, we put up the money, somebody brings a deal, and we push the project to the end, and both people split the profit. So in our case, we're going to joint venture only. We're going to involve the public a little more with a Patreon campaign. We're going to be really trying to focus on this last couple of years like a push to educate people, because when this next cycle comes around, we want as many people to be as prepared as possible. We're pushing our tech fund. Well, I don't want to say tech fund. I think we're going to push one main tech product, which is going to be a program called DealBot, which just helps people take deals from the beginning to the end, right? You start with a couple numbers, and it takes you all the way to the finish line, kind of automating the club. So we also run the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. The IEREIC meets 3 times a month now. It used to be 4. Meets 3 times a month. We have a Saturday morning coffee event, which we host at Arcade Coffee on the Saturday before our main meeting. We have the main meeting, which is about 150 people, at Loft 84, which is it's kind of like a show. It's like dinner and a show. We got taco guy and a full bar and a stage presentation, and we do an interview. It's like a Tonight Show for real estate. And then we do a cash flow game, which we just did last night, which was at Romano's in Redlands. That's around, I think it's 6 p.m. on the first Wednesday every month. So we have 3 events. The first Wednesday is cash flow. The Saturday before the main event is Saturday morning coffee at 8 a.m. at Arcade Coffee, and then the main meeting, Loft 84, is on the 4th Wednesday of the month at 6 p.m. If you're in the area and you're looking for an investment club, or you're just trying to get started in the real estate investment industry, check out our club. Check out any other club in the area. But you can go to meetup.com, search Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club or Indian Real Estate Investment Club, and I'm sure we'll come up with the largest in almost SoCal at this point. So one of the things that we've been talking a lot in the office about is like life changes, like what your, I don't have an easier way to explain this. What your expectations are, what your goals are, versus what you're actually doing on a daily basis. So on a daily basis, we work really hard. We have a good team, buy a lot of property, and lately we've been working like crazy hours and sort of and missing like a lot of the fun. And so Todd's on vacation now. I just got back from a 6-day vacation to the river, and I kind of felt like there's a better way. A better way to have a more balanced life. And the truth is, I think, and Todd and I have just spoke about this recently, I believe that no one should really flip more than 6 to 12 homes a year. I mean, you do more than one a month, and your life is sort of monopolized by it. You got to start hiring staff. It gets pretty intense, and you can make an incredible living doing 6 to 12 a year and then using that money to buy other projects or raising capital. So, for those of you who haven't done your first deal yet, something to keep in mind. I mean, everybody has this dream of sort of, running with the big boys, but the truth is the hedge funds, that's a job. That's like a full-time gig. So that's why we're changing the company structure and moving something back to something more manageable. And then we're going to start working on tiny homes. So if anybody's looking for the next trend in real estate, I truly believe tiny homes are it. Tiny homes they're mobile. They fall under trailer guidelines, so lending doesn't involve Dodd-Frank. The lending's a lot easier. It's auto title lending. They're easy to construct. They're cheap to buy, cheap to sell. You can collect a rent from really easy. And there's a density issue at this point. We're in suburban sprawl, right? Everybody out here in the Inland Empire has got 8,000, 10,000, 18,000 square foot lots. And they're not using their backyard, and you got kids coming home and everybody's cramming into a room. I think tiny homes in people's backyards are going to be the next trend. And somebody's listening to this and going like, what about the municipalities? Well, the truth is, if you can park an RV, right, in your backyard in your area, you can park a tiny home. So we're going to start a tiny home company. We're going to start manufacturing tiny homes. We've been talking about this for a while. Some recent things happened in the office, some capital raising. Capital raising's gone well lately, and we have the capital to do it. We're going to start building tiny homes and sell them to investors. So other than the tiny homes, DealBot and the club, Patreon, and the joint venture stuff, that'll be about the scope of the entire business. Sort of our way of like being able to give back to everybody at the same time, free up some of our time, make it more flexible, have a team that can run things. And I think in the end, we're going to be able to help significantly more people than we could today. So on that note, I have a class coming up. I've never done a class until now. I actually started preparing a master class. So people want to learn to flip, and I love to teach them, but it's when we do these joint ventures, there's only so much you can learn. So most people don't know where to get started. So on July 28th, tentatively at Red Hill Country Club in Upland. I'm going to do a master class. It's going to be all day. Cost of class is $5.99. It's $4.99 if you sign up before July 6th. And we'll spend an entire day just gutting out the business planning process. So if you're brand new or if you're experienced, whatever, and want to develop some kind of like house flipping business plan, this is your opportunity. So the easiest way to get the information for this class is just text a number and the link will come back to you. So if you text 909-341-0966, that's 909-341-0966. You'll get back a link. It'll take you to the course. You can sign up there. And we'll spend an entire day just crammed in a room. There should be about 50 people running through worksheets. And when you leave, you should have a legit business plan to start flipping homes today. In the class, I'm going to go over some of the really everything from like what I was talking about, life guidelines. So people have needs that they don't know are being met. You need to determine what your needs are for your family, analyzing your time management, reviewing your personal budget, setting daily goals, choosing marketing methods that fit your current time and budget, identifying lead sources, all the way out to how to find the best agent to sell your home after you're done flipping it. On that note, there's been this process that I've had in my back pocket for a while, and I call it the 3 offer method. And so if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out whether or not, why your offers aren't being accepted, you're trying to find property and it just doesn't seem to be working, there's a good chance that you're coming in one direction. So I want to go over a thing called the 3 offer method. So when I meet with a seller, if I meet with a seller with one intention only, which is to buy their home at a discount, the chances of me getting the home are very small. I follow up with them. If their circumstances are right, 1 out of every 100 or 1 out of every 50 people will sell me their home. But the truth is, a lot of us are leaving money on the table. We're not considering that every time you meet with someone, you should be selling them on something, right? They told you they need to sell their home, or you you identified a reason they should sell their home, and these people need some kind of help, right? So when I meet with a seller, one of the ways I make an offer is by showing them 3 different conditions. One is, if you sell it to me today as a flip and I just buy it as is, you move, you take all your stuff and go, that's one offer. It's at 75% of ARV minus repairs. That's a very simple offer to make. It's what I'm going to resell the property for after I fix it up, minus what it costs, times 0.75% minus what it costs to fix, and that's the amount of offer. The second option I give them is if they wanted to sell with a realtor today, what would the market actually bear? And people are like, why would you tell them, why would you tell them they could go with a realtor? Well, the truth is, if you have a license, and even if you don't, you can make a referral fee, but if you have a license, I can send that person to an agent, and that agent can take that listing, and when they sell that property, I'm going to get 25% of the commission for a referral fee. And if you're not licensed, you can get $500 in the state of California. On the other side, you can sort of show them, and that gives you can look at that. That's essentially an offer, right? Because you can show them what their net is. They can see right in front of their face what their other options are. The third one is, what if they fix it up themselves, right? Some people have the income to fix it up themselves, or they believe they're going to, and then they have a different net, and that net return may be higher, and you want to talk to them about that. So you would say, this is what construction costs would be. If you listed it with an agent, I can refer you to one when you're done. Here's what your return will be. And now these people have 3 offers sitting in front of them, right? They have the amount you could pay today, which is 2-week money, right? You're going to receive that money in 2 weeks or less. The amount they would make if they listed with an agent, that's 90 to 120 day money, right? Depending on sense of urgency. And one of the caveats to that is you tell the agent that if the amount they're going to take, or the amount they're going to net, is less than the amount you would have offered, you get the property back and you get to buy it. It could sit on the market for a while, and then the agent kills the listing because they couldn't get more than the amount you're willing to pay. And the third option, rehab it themselves, is somewhere around 180 days to a year, depending on how qualified they are, how good they are at this. And you can sit in front of a seller and show them all these ways of selling, and they're going to pick one. And the truth is, when they're done, when they've reviewed all the offers, they're going to pick one of them. they're going to say, I want this one, right? But what you're essentially saying is these are your only options. So really, and at this point, it's just a matter of you following up and figure out which option they're going to choose. But I mean, worst case scenario, you send it to an agent and you get a referral fee. Best case scenario, it comes back and you get a deal. Looking at our list, we had offer, negotiate, and then purchase. So purchasing properties is our next category for the month. Is actually what it was. I got to be honest. There's a giant field of junk in the purchase process that people should consider. I guess I'll run down. Since I'm sitting here talking to myself, I'll run down the purchase process we go through. It's a 14-day process to buy, so you can kind of get an idea of what to expect throughout the process. So let's say the scariest thing happens, right? That you get an offer accepted, because it seems like every time I talk to people, they're like, well, what if they say yes? So as much as people pretend like they're trying to find a deal, the truth is they're just scared to death that a seller is actually going to tell them, okay, you can buy it, and they got to figure out what to do next. So in our case, we have this big checklist. If you want all the materials that I'm talking about today, if you go to crg.email, that's www.crg.email, you can sign up there's a short form there. You just put in your information and you get this big email with basically all the tools we use every day. Our file checklist, our deal analysis sheet, construction cost estimator, yada yada. It's all free. We're not trying to sell you a bunch of garbage. We just do it because we talked to people for a long time and we had to explain this over and over again, so we put it in writing so we didn't have to continue to explain it. So going back to what happens when we get an offer accepted. So in our case, there's a bunch of internal stuff, right? But really what's happening is you're starting to do research. Let's say a seller, a seller says yes, and they told you some things about the home, but you don't know if any of them are true, right? You don't know if the additions really are permitted, right? You don't know where the easements actually are. You don't know what's actually owed on the property. There's a bunch of things you don't know. So it's your job now to start digging. One of the places people start is the assessor. My personal favorite place to start is the MLS, but not everybody has access to that. So if I were somebody without MLS access, I would start from the My First American app. If you need a rep, Brett Rainey's our rep here in the Inland Empire out of the Riverside office. Contact him. They can set you up with the My First Am app, which allows you to put a property address in and basically shows you everything. Shows you the property profile, which gives you the characteristics of the property, the transaction history, every document that's associated with the property now. It gives you some really detailed information. It sort of helps you propose a bunch of questions. One of the things you're going to want to do when you're at the property is take a bunch of photos, so when you're referencing back, you have a clear view of what the property actually is, because a lot of times I'll leave a house, and especially if you look at a lot of them, I don't remember half of the interior. So one of the other steps I take in that research process, which we call this step 2. The agreement is step 1. In our case, step 2 is the sort of gathering of data. I want to call code enforcement, and I want to call building and safety, and I want to find out what's going on with the property. I want to find out if there's any current code enforcement issues, because that's going to tell me what I'm going to have to deal with the city. It also is going to tell me there may be some fines that are going to come up later in the transaction. And I want to talk to building and safety about any additions, or I want to find out if there's anything open, right? Maybe somebody pulled a building permit and they didn't complete it. I mean, that happens a lot. People, they just don't get final, right? The work's done, they don't complete it, and now you have a property with an open permit, and you have to disclose that on the other side. You just need to finish the work, and in most cases, it takes somebody coming out to inspect it, and you're done. We all think from the computer we can get a really good idea what a value of a property is, but comparable sales are part of this research process, and I personally believe everybody should drive the comparable sales or walk, depending where they're at. So let's say you believe that your property could resell for $300,000. Well, you looked on the internet and you saw some photos and they all look a certain way, but you don't know if the driveway's at a certain angle, if it has a possible view, if the street's a little better. So I take all my comparable sales and I go out and I walk property. I literally walk the entire neighborhood that they're in, because you should keep your comparable sales down to one neighborhood. And I view the properties to see if I believe they're inferior or superior to my existing property. So let's say you do all that research and everything checks out, right? Building permits are good. You don't have any problems to solve. There's no issues with any of the departments at the city that have some kind of restriction on the property. Code enforcement's like, yep, good. No dead animals they found or giant lawns they find. Comparable sales checkout, your value's correct. You look at the deal sheet and the property's the same size. I mean, you're an ideal deal, right? The easy one to close. The next thing you have to do is open escrow. And I don't know why, but this, and maybe it's because there's not really any public information. This seems to be the hardest thing for everyone to do. So our escrow company is Emerald Escrow. That's the one we use out of Corona. Donna Path and Anna Path and their team. Everybody over there is really awesome. They make it easy. We just call and say, I need to open escrow, and they tell us what they need from us. In most cases, just the contract, and if there's no agent involved, that's all they need to draft escrow instructions. Minus a deposit if that's the case. So, escrow has one job. Escrow's job is to look at the contract, read the terms that both sides have agreed to, and then when those terms are met by both parties, swap the paper, meaning the deed, for the money, right? Somebody puts money in, somebody puts the title of the property in, and escrow says, all of you did everything you said you were going to do in this contract, and they trade. So if you want to open escrow, all you're doing is sending them a contract so they can open escrow and create a new contract from the document you originally created that says these are all the things everybody has to do, then we can close. They're going to order a title report, hopefully a natural hazard. There's some state level forms you're going to have to fill out. But for the most part, escrow should make that process really easy for you. So if you're afraid of what to do when an offer is accepted after you've done all your research, it's just open escrow. You call an escrow company that has good reviews on Yelp or our escrow, Emerald Escrow in Corona. You say, hey, I have a deal. I have a property that has a contract on. I need to open escrow. They'll take care of it. There's no need for anxiety, and I'm surprised by the number of anxious calls I get about this. Further down that line, we're going to get into reports. In that process, we have one of the most confusing things is a preliminary title report. So a preliminary title report is a report from title that says these are all the things attached to the property, right? These are all the deeds that currently exist. These are the liens that currently exist. These are loans that currently exist. And are you going to take the property subject to all these conditions, or do they need to be cleared in some way, right? The property need to be deeded to you. The liens need to be paid off. The loans need to be paid off. Are the easements okay? And title's job is to put all that in a report, and they insure the property based on these certain conditions. And if you have a lender involved, they're going to help you clear all these things. So when you're new, my advice is to always get a hard money loan. Everybody says, oh, no, hard money. No, legitimately get a hard money loan, because your hard money lender is going to look out for you. If you go to a good escrow company and you have a good hard money lender, chances are 90% of the time you're going to get exactly what you expect from the property. A lot of people try and partner when they're brand new are the ones who end up having issues. They find a family friend that has some money, that has no real estate experience, and they get stuck with some weird thing on the property they didn't know because no one was protecting them throughout the process. They give you this giant natural hazard report, and I got to be honest, I never read the stupid thing. It's like 100 pages. All the disclosures are always the same. The Inland Empire is mostly similar, but you do want to look at like floodplain issues, fire zone issues, supplemental property tax bill, or special assessments actually. So one of the things that people you hear people say Melrose. So people said Melrose a lot during the cycle, the 2000s cycle. So they said, oh, it's got no Melrose. Well, Melrose are also called a couple other things, community facility districts, called CFD. They're essentially a bond that is attached to the property that you have to pay off over time. So let's say you want to build a school and the builder doesn't want to build the school. They're going to build the school and then make everybody who buys a home from them pay for it through this bond, and it's essentially it's like a tax for 25 years, 20 to 30, and they make you pay it over time. Well, these things can add up. I mean, I saw a KB track in Paris that had $6,000 a year in special assessments, which means that if you're a buyer buying at $200,000, right, and you think you're gonna have a $1,200 payment, guess what? You actually have a $1,700 payment by adding that $500 a month. That's 6,000, divided by the 12 in payments because taxes. But the builders don't disclose them really well. So when you're going to sell when you're buying a property and you're planning on reselling it, you need to understand what the tax position is of that property, so that because a buyer is going to look for that, right? You're going to put the property up for sale, and you're like, why is my tract selling for, $50,000 less than every tract around it? Well, it's because the taxes are so high, the buyers can't qualify any higher than that amount. So that's the price ceiling. So special assessments is a really important part of that natural hazard and special assessment disclosure. HOA info. HOAs are notoriously slow. Escrow is going to order all this stuff for you. I always ask for it. It's if you're using a residential purchase agreement, the CAR form, the one by the California Association of Realtors, it's going to have all this info on it. If you create your own offering form, it's not going to be there. So you always want to ask for HOA info if it exists. What escrow is going to do is they're going to order all these HOA docs. They're going to say, I need your bylaws and any conditions of the neighborhood. You're on top of the HOA stuff. You have this thing called CC&Rs, which are restrictions set by the builder. The HOA, the CC&Rs take a little while. The HOA takes forever. I mean, sometimes these guys take 30 days. So a lot of times you have to close a deal, in your case if we're closing fast, and waive our right to review the HOA bylaws. If you know the HOA already, it's not a big deal, but this they can be pretty heavy-handed. I mean, your HOA could have a RV restriction, for example, and dramatically decrease the value of your neighborhood versus the neighbor. So you gotta look pretty deep in the HOA stuff. Septic tank. So lately, the septic tank has been a hilarious debacle. We look for the caps in the street, right? We go out to the street and say, like, are there sewer lids? Has this neighborhood been hooked up to sewer? But some of these homes, especially the ones we've been buying lately, are like pre-1950s. They were on septic systems and they didn't have, they were never connected to sewer. The city will put the sewer T in the street, right? But no lateral was put in. The property's never been connected to sewer. So in some cities, they demand the property be connected to sewer upon sale, and this can be a $15,000 expense. It's a big deal. So you really need to find out whether the property is on septic or sewer. If it's on sewer and it's already connected, good. The new owner will pay for the sewer connection. If it's on septic, you need to get a septic cert. So upon the purchase, you're going to spend roughly $600 to get a company to come out, check the septic tank. A septic tank is essentially where everything from your toilet system goes. And percolates and filters itself through the ground, and then is cleaned out on a regular basis, 10, 20 years, depending on the life of the tank and the reliability and quality of it. So the septic tank certification will tell you, like, if the septic tank is good, how long it's basically good for, and then they'll do a cert, meaning they'll pump the thing, look at the walls, say, we certify that this is a good tank, and your buyer's really going to want it on the backside. We just do it on every transaction, so we don't have to worry about whether or not a buyer may ask for it. It's just completed. Like when they buy a home from us, they get a complete property septic tank already certified. Termite report's the same way, right? You really want a termite report on your property. When you're purchasing property, it could have an incredible amount of termites. A tent alone could cost you somewhere between $2,500 and $5,000. That's a giant hit to your bottom line. Get a termite report. You don't necessarily have to do the work, right? You can just get the report and say, oh, there's $600 worth of wood rot, and we could take care of it during construction. But you definitely want the inspection. So it's not a requirement. Well, it is actually at the state level, but for some reason it gets overlooked. It's a requirement to do a TDS. And the TDS, the transfer disclosure statement, and there's a call out for SPQ, seller property questionnaire, which is it's a lawsuit waiting to happen form. But essentially, you can tell a seller they have to provide you with a TDS and a SPQ. These two forms, the transfer disclosure statement and seller property questionnaire, can be demanded by escrow, and that sets a seller up to disclose most of the information. Because essentially, if they know about it and they don't disclose it, and you have proof that they knew about it, you can sue them, and nobody wants to be sued. I mean, given the lawsuit we just closed out and the nearly $200,000 expense it cost us to pursue the loss that somebody forced on us, I would not want to have to spend $200,000 defending myself if I was on the other end of that thing. Sellers are going to want to disclose everything. They're just hoping you're going to accept it. So, from what I've talked about, right now you have like this stack of reports. You have these, this information you've gathered from public entities. And then you're going to have your escrow instructions, right, that you sign, which is essentially verifying the contract. And then there's a bunch of stuff that your lender's going to want if you have a lender. And, like, for example, some of the stuff we have, because we're our own lender and buyer, we have our, homeowners insurance quote, because you definitely need homeowners. You know what? I should talk about homeowners insurance. So homeowners insurance is a bit of a mess in this space. There's only a couple companies, Lloyd's, IEREIC. Those are only two main ones I can think of right now that do insurance policies for construction, abandoned properties, vacant, anything other than a basic owner-occupied that actually have coverage that works. So you'll hear a lot of farmers reps pushing a farmer's policy because I believe they have a 60-day, it may even be 90, I'm pretty sure it's a 60-day option for vacancy. You can buy the property and the property is allowed to be vacant for 60 days. Well, if that property goes beyond 60 days and it's not rehabbed with the occupant in it, farmers will kill your policy. And you could be paying this thing like, oh, they didn't know any better. Well, you'd have to prove that somebody was in there at some time, and it's going to be hard if you knew what the condition was to prove somebody was in there, and farmers may not pay out your claim. So it's about double. If you get an insurance quote for a flip, it's about double what a regular policy is. So you usually hear the term used it's like 0.0046% or 0.0046. So 0.46% is the total premium per year. In this case, with a flip property, you're going to spend about 1% of the value of the property per year. And it's worth every penny, especially if you only have the property for like 120, 150 days. So make sure you're getting the right insurance policy when you're buying. And your lender's going to force that. Sometimes they'll force you into a pool. We used to do that. We used to force people into our policy because we knew our policy was superior to everything out there. In our case, Todd's dad was a senior underwriter for Travelers forever. Well, he's a bunch of positions, but he really knew the business, and he could look at our policy and say, these are all the holes you need to plug to make sure you're covered. You're going to have all your security agreement documents, deed of trust, note, all the stuff that the lender's going to require of you, and they're going to ask for all kinds of stuff that I probably don't even have here. And so if you've done all your research, you got your contract locked up, you've signed your escrow instructions and any other forms they need, and everything looks good, you're going to close. I mean, there's not much else to do, right? I say not much else as if the file isn't 200 pages long. But most real estate transactions require a bunch of moving parts and a bunch of professionals to do their job. And surprisingly, even when I've been on vacation, haven't had the ability to get in to escrow right away, or I've kind of ignored the documentation until I sit down at escrow at the very end and I go to read all the documentation. It's surprising how I'm looking at a complete file where escrow and title and the agent and all the parties work together to get me like everything I need in one place. I can go to my escrow office and I'll have a file stack perfectly in order, every report to read, every form to sign, and I can go through there in a very short amount of time and completely analyze the property again, make sure all my ducks are in a row, and close the thing out because I had the right team. And not everybody in this business is created equal, but a lot of escrow and title officers are pretty dang good. So after you've completed all your forms and you've got all the money to escrow, sellers completed all their forms, they've got all their money to escrow, or they've got all their terms met in escrow. Escrow closed. They'll record the document. So what they'll do is they take the document to the county recorder through a runner, through title, a bunch of different means depending on the company you work with and how they work. And they take it to the county recorder's office and record it publicly. So you now have a public record of your deed transfer, so you don't have to worry about keeping a deed in your safe, right? It sounds like a weird thing to worry about, but 100 years ago that was the case. Title insurance has only been around, less than 150 years. I mean, before people transferring money with cash and deeds and homesteading. So one of the things you're going to want to do as soon as you finish your property is you're going to want to secure it. You're going to want to go change your locks. You want to board anything up that needs to be boarded up. You're going to want to make sure that the property is safe and clean. You want to get a demo crew in there to take out any trash or anything else that's that could possibly harm somebody right away. Especially like fire properties, properties that have had vagrants in them, any kind of issues related to hazardous material. They all need to be picked up right away. And I've seen the gamut. I've seen everything from like a turnkey home that's already stripped. I shouldn't say turnkey. A clean home that's already been stripped to needles. Still like homeless people coming in and out on a daily basis. Backed up toilets. So you want to make sure you get all those buttoned up, and then you can take your time to figure out the construction process. And that's important. You need to set yourself up, secure the property, get your utilities on, right? So like your construction crew has utilities, and be able to have bid a clean, easy to view product so that your construction bids are lower. Now, one of the things I want to talk about is utilities. So when we call a utility company, we call for a corporate account. We say that, hey, this is a corporate account. It's a residential property, but a corporate account. So a mistake a lot of people make is they'll put a bunch of utilities in their name and it'll be residential service. If you call and you ask for the business services, the business line, you get through a lot faster. You get a person. They let you use your EIN number and your company info. They ask you to send some stuff via email. And if you have an entity set up, right, even if it's like a trust or just an LLC, you can do everything in your entity name separate from your personal bill. Because what will happen is all of a sudden your personal bill at home has all these other utilities tacked onto it, and that can get really confusing. It can be an issue for billing. When you go to do your taxes, you got to try and separate the two out. It's a giant pain in the neck. So I mean, that's essentially the entire purchase process, like front to end. That's that's the basics. The only thing I really left out is lending, and we self-fundraise. So essentially what we do is we take our project, we put it in an email, and we email it out to a bunch of investors, right? We say, here investors, here's this new deal we bought. What do you think of it, and will you give us money for it? So instead of doing like a loan with the lender, we do private loans with individuals, and we pay them a great return. And so all we have to do is email them, and they call us back and tell us how much money they want to give us and when. Todd's not here to cut me off and tell me that this is not an attempt to sell securities. It should not be interpreted as one, yada, yada, yada. But essentially, what I'm supposed to disclose is that if I'm ever going to talk about like anything we do as far as the financial side, there's a bunch of securities laws associated with it. If you're going to raise capital in any way, make sure you're 100% compliant. Make sure you talk to an attorney. It's extremely important to make sure you have that done properly, because the different organizations that oversee lending or capital raising in the United States are not lenient. You do not want to make these people angry. You want to make sure everything's in line, and so that not only that your investors are protected, but you're protected from any prosecution. So when we get to the point where we're finishing up an escrow transaction, we're usually cleaning up a file. And so one of the very last things you want to do before you close that transaction is you want to clean up your file. You want to have a reasonable checklist. And if you haven't read the checklist manifesto, I suggest you do. You want to have a checklist of exactly what you need and what is expected on every file, and make sure all of those things are there, right? You want to make sure all of those items are in, they're accounted for, the reports have been viewed, and now you feel comfortable closing your transaction, and you are 100% protected. So on the real estate management side, next month we're I don't know who we're gonna for guests. Todd knows better than I do because he's not here, but throughout the month we'll have more people talking about the purchasing process. I'm sure they're gonna have great horror stories associated with it. I have a feeling that's the majority. Matter of fact, that's exactly who I should have on this month. This month should be just the horror stories of purchasing property, because I find those absolutely fascinating. The process is always difficult. Most of the difficult part of a purchase is the seller. The sellers are in interesting life situations. Matter of fact, I was just talking to Charlie. He's been on the show before, Charlie Hustle. He just had a seller that they found the body of the person in a trailer in the back, like while they were looking for this missing person, like died in a trailer in the rear. He had meth heads to deal with on the property. I mean, there's like an incredibly difficult purchase, but they closed it. They closed the deal, and they were able to get this one lady who was sort of a victim of the circumstance. But I mean, she obviously did it to herself. A chunk of cash, and they will take the property off her hands and secure this lady's, like, she's elderly, secure her future. This last month we bought 6 homes, 6 homes, and we're buying a couple more this month. I think we only have 2 or 3, which is going to be kind of nice. I can breathe a little bit. And a lot of them came from wholesalers. And so part of the purchasing process that can be really difficult for a new person trying to buy from a wholesaler is figuring out the logistics. So one of the complaints I've had this month in dealing with wholesalers is them having the paperwork together. As a real estate investor, I have a really good understanding of what I'm looking for. So if I were to be a wholesaler, which we're considering that idea as well, if I were to be a wholesaler, I know how to put together a file for a real estate investor. The chances are if you're new and somebody's wholesaling you a deal, they're probably new too. The experienced wholesalers knew who the experienced buyers are, and they don't mess with new people. Your process is going to go sideways. It's going to be extremely difficult. Chances are the wholesaler doesn't have all the paperwork they need or know how to do either double escrow or transfer the property to do an escrow. So I want to give you guys a couple tips on how to make sure, if you have a wholesaler, if a wholesaler is bringing you a deal, that it goes properly. First and foremost, you want to make sure you're only dealing with the wholesaler themselves, the person who has spoken with the seller, has a contract with the seller to buy the property, and they want to. If you don't know what a wholesaler is, their goal is to sell that contract, right, for a higher value than the contract amount they have. So if the seller agreed to sell them the property for $100,000 and you're willing to buy it for $120,000, the wholesaler makes $20,000. So you want to make sure they're the person with a direct contact. You don't want, like, we'll call them daisy chains, a series of people, in the middle of this transaction, just making things more confusing. Next, you want to make sure you have a semi-flexible seller. So, like, an example would be an REO bank or an REO property, bank-owned property. They're not real keen on you changing the name of the buyer of the property. Probate, not as bad, but if it needs court order approval, it's difficult to change the name. A short sale is damn near impossible because you have to get a new short sale approval and a new name. That's something you want to avoid at all costs. You want it in the proper name at close. Otherwise, you have to close in their name and do some tricky stuff, and I wouldn't recommend any new person do it. So you're going to want, if you're going to agree to take over a contract, I suggest not paying a wholesale fee up front. I suggest paying it on the HUD, meaning through escrow, or paying it after escrow closes. Not hide it, just make sure you're invoiced and you pay it in full. You've got to be very careful. We avoid something called secret profit, especially because I have a license. The license agent has to disclose any money that's paid to anybody. The seller has to know that if a fee was made beyond the fee agreed to, that they're okay with it. And that can be done properly with paperwork, but you got to make sure you actually do the paperwork. So I don't recommend you pay a non-refundable fee up front. Deposit your money into escrow. Make sure that money goes from escrow or from your bank account after you close to the wholesaler direct. You do not want it to pay a wholesaler up front for a contract, because the contract's only as good as the paper it's written on, and in some cases it's toilet paper. So when you get a wholesale contract delivered to you via email or in person or whatever, you really want to make sure that the contract's fairly straightforward. A lot of people can have different conditions, right? Like move out money, move out time, long-term possession of the property. Someone could say, I want to stay there 6 months after you close, which costs you a bunch of interest. You want to really review that contract and make sure whatever they agreed to is something you're willing to agree to. And if not, before you agree to the contract, you need to do some kind of addendum that's going to change that contract to make it fit your terms. Next, after that wholesale contract looks good, and it could possibly be transferred. So there's a term I use. You'll hear people when they do these national classes, they say, you want to make sure that your contract says and or assigned. So it'd say like Stephen McKee and or assigns, means Stephen McKee and another person or another person assigns, meaning the person I assign it to. Agents, sellers, people have really gotten like leery of this term because it's typically a term associated with inexperienced wholesalers. So you want to use it. The term I use is or an entity of my choosing. So Stephen McKee or an entity of my choosing. In our case, we say community restoration group or an entity of our choosing. By doing that, I'm explaining to the seller, like, look, we have multiple partners. Depending on who takes over this project, it could be in a different entity. We just need the flexibility to be able to put it in a different entity after close or before we close. Sellers are usually okay with that. The and or assigns thing, it raises a bunch of red flags. Make sure if there are any other forms that were signed by the wholesaler that you have copies of all those and you sign and acknowledge that you've received them. And I guess lastly would be there's a point in which escrow will have you take over. You want to make sure that it's a clean break, right? Escrow says, here's this documentation. There's they draft an addendum, and the addendum says, the buyer used to be this person, now the buyer's this person. All parties agree to it, and it's transferred over, and there's no weird stuff in the middle. I've seen every mistaken variation of this, and it makes deals fall apart. You just need to do, it's called a substitution of buyer. You don't even have to do a full assignment, especially if there's no documentation, meaning they haven't signed escrow instruction, whatever. You just substitute the buyer out. It's very easy to do, much easier than like an assignment. Sellers get kind of wary of assignments. If the person's signed all the documentation, escrow documentation, all the disclosures, all that stuff already, you're going to have to do an assignment. So actually, a good wholesaler can take a deal all the way through the end of escrow, like to where it's ready to close, and then they just deliver you an entire packet of information in the same way I go to escrow and I review an entire packet of information, and you can take over everything they had by signing one addendum saying, I accept all this documentation that was already signed, whether and it's a blanket statement. It says it's every piece of documentation. It won't call them out individually. So since we're getting towards the end of the hour, I want to go over this month's meeting. So, like I said earlier, if you just joined us, Todd and I run the Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club. We have 3 meetings a month. The first meeting, which was the cash flow game, was last night at Romano's in Redlands at 6 o'clock. From what I understand, there was a little confusion in the door, but it ended up going really well. The next event we have for the month is June 23rd. That's our Saturday morning coffee event. That will be at 8 a.m. at Arcade Coffee in Riverside on Chicago. It's a pretty cool coffee shop. It says, I think, video time on the outside. It's a speakeasy style coffee shop, but great people, good environment. And so it's just a social event. You come, drink some coffee, meet people, talk about what you got going on in the business. If nothing, it's fine. Everybody just sort of shares their experience with each other. It's an open environment to get to know your peers. It's kind of like a support group for all of us crazy people that flip houses or buy real estate in any way. The main meeting, the big meeting, the one about 150 people go to with the largest network, is on Wednesday the 27th at Loft 84 in downtown Riverside. That'll start at 6 p.m. We'll have a taco guy all night. Well, it usually goes from about 6 till 10. We'll have a taco guy. So if you're hungry and coming after work, don't worry, we got you covered. We got a full bar. We got a bit of a stage show presentation. Todd and I do our best to not take it too seriously. The network is more important than the information. The guest is always I just haven't had any complaints about the guests. The interview goes really well because they're not doing a presentation. The guests are always really informative, and the audience is always really happy with the information they got. Also, we do a section called Haves and Wants. So if you have a deal or you have money, looking for a deal, you can walk across the stage, take 30 seconds, and tell people what you got or what you need. we've had all kinds of deals happen just by people standing up there and saying, I have a duplex in Minnesota that I need $50,000 for, and they can have 50% of the equity or whatever the case may be. And people pair up. It's nice. So that being the case, that being said, I want to go over, and also you can find all the information on meetup.com. If you go to meetup.com and go to the Inland Empire and search Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club, or you can go to IEREIC.org, Inland Empire Real Estate Investment Club.org. You'll get all the information for every event every month, and we don't have a mail list there. We really do need to set up a mail list there. If you add me on LinkedIn, if you add Stephen McKee on LinkedIn, you automatically get added to that mail list. I promise in the future come up with a better way to do that. So again, the masterclass I'll be hosting this month, I want to clarify, this is a no upsell masterclass. There's no secondary, third, fourth, fifth pitch. This is a all-in-one class for $499, at least until July 6th. After July 6th, the fee will be raised to $599. And if you are looking to get started in the flipping business and don't know how, come to this class. I'll take you from I have absolutely no plan to a complete plan to start on Monday and build a flip business. If you want the information on that course, just text 909-341-0966. So text 909-341-0966. If you text that number, you're going to get a link straight back to you. That link is going to take you to the masterclass. It's going to give you all the information about it. You can decide if it's something worth going to. I've never done this before. I've spoken a lot in individual pieces. I have multiple presentations I've done at different clubs around the United States. But I'm sort of combining this and a bunch of new information all in one day. I really wanted to distill something down to a process that we've been teaching people this on a one-on-one basis, and I find myself repeating the same things over and over again. And after a while, you realize that there's a set of actions and skills that if you put in place, you'd be successful. And for some reason, we haven't done anything to teach people in bulk. So this will be the first time, and I'm pretty excited to share it with people. I'm hoping that out of this group of 50, everybody does well, but they do, that some people do really well, and they start Monday with this straight up full business plan. So I'm going to give you that number one last time because we got a couple minutes. It's 909-341-0966, 909-341-0966. Text that number and you get all the information on the class. We'll be doing a Patreon soon. If you don't know what Patreon is, it's a way for you to contribute on a monthly basis to us, large and small amounts of money. You can come hang out with us at our projects, walk properties, view videos of projects online, deal analysis sheets, whatever we want to involve you guys as much as we can. So look for that soon. I'm sure Todd will be announcing it on the air or next month when I'm on. That'll be the case. So with that being said, make sure you make it out to an event this month. Remember that your peers are the people who do the same thing as you, not your friends, right? Don't take judgment or advice from people who don't have the same interests. Those people can be your friends and family and whatever. So try and keep in mind that the only people you want to be around, at least business-wise, are the ones who are doing the exact same thing as you. So our clubs, our events, people in our network, those people help and act as a support system. So make it out to the coffee, the club. I assure you won't regret it. That being said, thank you guys so much for joining me today. My name is Stephen McKee, filling in for Todd Bayer on the Flip Flop Investor Show. I'm the previous other half of the show, but moved on to different things. So thanks again, guys, for listening, and we'll see you next week.